Welcome to Guides, English Language and Literature. This chapter focuses on the aftermath of the trial and how different characters react to the outcome. Bob Ewell confronts Atticus and threatens him, spitting in his face. However, Atticus remains composed, refusing to retaliate. His calm demeanor reinforces his belief that violence and hatred should not be met with more of the same. Meanwhile, Tom Robinson is moved to a distant prison, emphasizing how the legal system is designed to make appeals even more difficult for black defendants. Jem and Atticus have a critical conversation about justice, during which Atticus explains how racial bias in all-white juries leads to unjust convictions. This discussion highlights the systemic racism embedded in the legal system. Scout's desire to invite Walter Cunningham home shows her innocent view of social equality, but Aunt Alexandra forbids it, demonstrating her belief in strict class divisions. Jem and Scout reflect on Maycomb's rigid social hierarchy, leading Jem to speculate that Boo Radley may choose to stay inside to avoid the cruelty of the outside world. This marks a key moment of maturity for Jem, as he begins to understand the complexities of human behavior. The theme of justice and injustice continues in this chapter. Atticus's conversation with Jem exposes how deeply racial bias is ingrained in the legal system. Even when evidence clearly supports a defendant, the prejudices of an all-white jury ensure convictions based on race rather than truth. The theme of social class prejudice is also evident. Aunt Alexandra's refusal to let Scout befriend Walter Cunningham highlights the rigid class divisions among white families in Maycomb. It shows that prejudice exists beyond just race. It also influences how people within the same racial group interact with each other. Jem's loss of childhood innocence deepens as he begins to see the flaws in the justice system and society. He realizes that people are not always good or fair, marking an important stage in his moral growth. Atticus's lesson on empathy is challenged. He believes in understanding others, even Bob Ewell, but this belief is complicated by Ewell's pure hatred and cruelty. This suggests that there are limits to moral reasoning when faced with people who refuse to change. The motif of stepping into someone else's shoes appears again when Atticus urges Jem to consider Bob Ewell's perspective. However, this moment raises an important question about whether empathy can truly apply to all people, especially those driven by hatred. The discussion of Maycomb's social hierarchy reinforces how prejudice is not just about race but also about class. Aunt Alexandra's disdain for the Cunninghams shows that even within the white community, divisions and discrimination exist. Jem's speculation that Boo Radley chooses isolation suggests that Boo is fully aware of the cruelty of the world. This interpretation transforms Boo from a figure of fear into one of wisdom, implying that perhaps the best way to avoid hate is to remove oneself from it entirely. Jem's growth is evident in this chapter. He is no longer an innocent child who believes in fairness. Instead, he is beginning to understand the deep injustices of the world. Scout, too, is evolving. She starts to recognize the hypocrisy in social expectations, realizing that kindness should not be restricted by class or race. Aunt Alexandra's character remains rigidly prejudiced, but this chapter sets up later moments where her emotional depth will emerge. Her stance on class and race will be challenged as the novel progresses. Atticus remains a moral figure, but his belief in always seeing the good in others is tested by Bob Ewell. This raises an important question. Can all people be understood and forgiven? Bob Ewell's threats serve as foreshadowing, hinting at the violence yet to come. This chapter reflects the historical realities of the Jim Crow South, where legal systems were intentionally designed to disadvantage black defendants, even with strong legal representation. Black individuals rarely won cases against white accusers. Additionally, the novel highlights how class divisions among white families were also deeply ingrained. While race was the most obvious factor of discrimination, wealth and family reputation also dictated social standing. The discussion of biased juries remains relevant today. The novel's critique of the justice system and racial bias continues to resonate in modern conversations, showing that many of the issues presented in the novel are still present today. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.